Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following the news recently, you will have seen that the Eurozone is undergoing yet another crisis. The countries that make up the Eurozone are disputing the best way to exit the economic crisis caused by the coronavirus. Now, Italy wants debt mutualisation, so for all of the Eurozone countries to pool their debts, whereas the Dutch, and to a lesser extent the Germans, disagree with that approach. And this has led to yet more all-night meetings of Eurozone finance ministers. This time, of course, done not in Brussels, but over the internet. And we've seen the reappearance of hysterical newspaper articles predicting the imminent collapse of the euro. But no, I think it's highly unlikely that the euro is about to collapse. I'm sure a compromise solution will be found. And this is because the euro is now too much a part of our everyday lives. The euro has been around for about 20 years. And most Europeans can't even remember the currencies that existed before the euro. For them, the French francs and Italian lira and German marks are an increasingly distant memory. But actually, it may surprise you to learn that there are millions of people in the world today who are still using one of the currencies I mentioned, namely the French franc. The only thing is, a lot of them are probably not even aware that they're still using the franc. So 150 million in 14 African countries use a currency called the CFA Franc. Now, it won't surprise you to learn that these countries are mainly ex-French colonies. And CFA originally stood for Colonie Française d'Afrique. Now, the currency was set up by the French state in 1945 as a way to impose economic control on its African colonies. But of course, things changed after the war. And in the 1960s, the French colonies all gained independence. And so, as I've said, the French government had to make a few changes to the currency. First of all, the CFA zone was split into two. Now there are two different currencies. There's the Western CFA franc, which is used by 8 Western African countries, including Mali and Senegal. And then there's the Central CFA franc zone. And the Central CFA franc is used by countries like the Republic of Congo, Cameroon, and, obviously enough, the Central African Republic. But despite the fact that there are two different currency zones, both currencies are pegged to the French franc. So there are 100 CFA francs to 1 French franc. And both CFA francs are worth the same. So 1 Western CFA franc is worth the same as 1 Central CFA franc. But surprisingly enough, if you're a traveller from Senegal, which uses the Western CFA franc, you won't be able to spend your Western CFA franc banknotes in a supermarket in, say, Gabon, which uses the Central CFA franc. Annoyingly, you'll have to go to the Bureau de Change and you'll have to exchange your banknotes. Another change that was brought about after independence of these African countries was the name. Now, as I said before, CFA used to stand for Colonie Française d'Afrique. But obviously, that really had to change. And now, in the Central Zone, CFA stands for Coopération Financière Africaine. And in the Western Zone, it stands for Communauté Financière Africaine. But the next big change in the currency came in 2002, when France exchanged the franc for the euro. Now, French citizens exchanged their francs at 6 francs 55 centimes to 1 euro. But this had very little effect on Africa. The currency still remained pegged to the euro, this time at 655 CFA francs to 1 euro. and the currency was still backed by the French treasury. Now, this arrangement has a number of advantages for the CFA countries. First of all, it provides them with a very stable currency, and you only have to compare their currency to other currencies in the region. If you look at Ghana, for example, Ghana suffers constant inflation and devaluation. This means that the business climate can be quite uncertain, and imported products into Ghana are prohibitively expensive. The CFA zone allows imports to come in quite cheaply, and it also facilitates exports to the Eurozone. But there are disadvantages as well. The fact that goods can be imported cheaply slows down economic development in the region. So if you can import the goods, you're unlikely to produce them yourselves. And secondly, many people are beginning to complain that the CFA franc is in fact a legacy of colonialism. There is growing discontent at the currency in the region. And that's why at the end of last year, there was an agreement between France and the CFA countries to have a major reform of the currency. Eventually, the CFA franc is going to be replaced by a new currency called the ECO. And it's hoped that other countries in the region, countries that weren't French colonies, countries like Ghana and Sierra Leone, will join this currency bloc, and there will be a single currency zone across most of Africa. Now, it's not known if the new currency will remain linked in some way to the euro, but what is a fact is that after about 20 years after it disappeared in France, we're finally going to see an end to the legacy of the French franc. Thank you very much.